In November 2012, the Census Bureau said that more than 16% of the population living in the United States is living in poverty. It also reported that 20 million children are living in poverty, and it associated most of these impoverished folks with either being out of work or being working, but their wages were too low. Mr. Dupree is with RDC, and RDC focuses on issues regarding labor and low wages. He's the chief organizer with RDC. He's known for going toe-to-toe with corporations and with government contracting organizations that provide the cheap labor to run these buildings and to run places that serve fast food. Travis, can you tell us how long you've been with RDC and what motivated you to get involved in the struggle that workers are having?
Absolutely. First, congratulations on the anniversary. It's an exciting time. Thanks for having us, and I say us because I represent a lot of people. I'm here once again just as a mouthpiece. But we're focused on, primarily, when we started out focusing on bringing good jobs to the district. When I say that, I say good jobs, right? Not just any job. DC is an extremely expensive place to live. People that I've known growing up here can no longer afford to live here. People that I've known that had their houses handed down to them from parents or grandparents couldn't afford to stay in the city and in a sense had to move. So RDC was created approximately 3 years ago, really to focus on community issues, but primarily on bringing good jobs to the district so people that live and work here can thrive here. We see a lot of cranes coming up, a lot of buildings and businesses coming to the city, so we see that DC is viable in the sense of a financial standpoint. People that live here, a lot of folk that work 40, 50, 60 hours a week still have to rely on social services, which doesn't make sense. We talk about income equality, which are two words that are often thrown around, and that gap is changing tremendously. So I was introduced to RDC just to help build relationships. What has happened is, so many groups are siloed out, with their certain issues, but at the end of the day, we all care. We want to make this a better place to live. So what I started doing was reaching out to every group I could get a phone number, email address, or contact, just to see what folks were doing, see how we could hook up. And it's worked. Through some coalition work, we've been able to really press the issue on brown living wage. Although the LRA bill didn't pass, we were able to get enough attention to get minimum wage, unanimously passed here, $11.50 as of 2016, which we all know is still not enough. We're working with Working Families Party to get a ballot initiative started, hopefully, to get it to be $12.50, but it's still not enough. $12.50 an hour doesn't provide enough money for a family of 4, and that's 2 working parents and 2 children to survive. You mentioned that we go toe-to-toe with corporations. You're damn right we do.
Good. Keep it going.
These CEOs of these billion-dollar, some million-dollar corporations can feed their pets better than we can feed our kids. And unfortunately, we know they're not going to wake up at any point and decide to do the right thing and pay their hard-working employees a living wage, let them have their fair share of the pie. So we have to continue to apply pressure, bring attention, and be folk like you all that are willing to get the word out. Once again, most of us here are here for our support. Our primary supports are different issues, but we're all here because we want this to be a better place, not just a better city, a better country, and ultimately a better world to live in. I'm a father, and I want my kids to have better opportunities than I had growing up. But at this point, I don't see that happening. I don't see those opportunities being provided for them. Our team spends countless hours every day in the city knocking on doors, primarily in Ward 7 and 8. And everyone says the same thing. They want safer neighborhood, and ultimately they want to be able to go to work every day, come home feeling good about what they've done, and put food on the table. I meet a lot of mothers that have to decide whether they're going to fill a prescription or fill a refrigerator with food. And I don't know if everyone in eyesight notices that or hears those stories. So what we try to do is share those stories with the country. We spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill because to politicians, we often become numbers on a spreadsheet. We're not real people, but I can tell you just within, the shadows of the Capitol, there are thousands of people that are struggling to provide food. And once again, these are not just unemployed people. People equate Southeast or some of the poor parts of D.C. with unemployment. And although the unemployment rate is the highest in the country, Ward 7 and 8, there are also a lot of hardworking people that do the hard work that maybe we wouldn't want to do or actually couldn't do, and still can, like I said, provide an honest living. We mentioned the employees of these contracts, these federal buildings. Visitors come to town every single day and go to Union Station or these great museums or the Reagan building and find out these workers working these federal government contracts are making minimum wage and often less than minimum wage, and suffer wage theft and threats from their employer if they decide to let their voices be heard. They've been threatened with termination, deportation, things of that nature. So one of our biggest successes has been following some of these strikes that these workers have taken stand, is after a worker or two being fired or threatened, we've supported them the following day, which I think is just important. So not only will we stand with you today if you strike, but when you want to go back to work the next day, the community's going to be behind you. I think that's very important. So these workers aren't alone. This is a movement nationwide, and we're just happy to do our small part.
Travis, who's DC?
It's our DC, right?
Travis, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I obviously have a lot of follow-up questions with you, but we're going to introduce our next panelist, and then we're going to come back and we're going to address some of the issues you brought up concerning labor, wages, and some of the compelling issues that the families are struggling in the District of Columbia, probably all around the country.
Absolutely.
Our next panelist is Coulter Lowe, who is a citizen journalist and a photographer. Coulter traveled from Cincinnati to join us at our anniversary, and thank you so much for coming, Coulter. Coulter has had an experience with law enforcement while reporting the news. And Coulter, can you tell us a little bit about your experience, what happened, and how your case led to a court action?
Probably about a couple months before Occupy started, I had moved to Philadelphia after some stuff had happened in my life, and I was helping my friend do some work up there. And as a photographer, I started walking around the city looking for pictures. Happened upon Rittenhouse Square, which is just about center city of Philadelphia. There I encountered a police officer interacting with a homeless woman and a homeless man out of Los Angeles. They were crossing the country. I stood around for a little bit, didn't really see much going on, took a few pictures, and after a couple of minutes, probably about 10 minutes, the officer started escorting the woman out of the park because I think her dog was off of the leash and there was something about leash laws. But at that point, I stopped the officer. I asked him the permission to take the woman's picture. An environmental portrait was what I was going for. It was in the park. She had been sleeping in the park. He said no, I'd have to wait until the end of his investigation. I said okay, and backed off. They continued to walk out of the park. I started to follow them, and the police police officer did not like that. He turned around, confronted me, told me I wasn't allowed to take any pictures, and that I had to walk the other way. It was kind of an adrenaline-fueled moment, but I remember saying pretty much no, I know my rights, something to that effect, and he arrested me. I was in jail for probably about 45 minutes to an hour before I was released. Showed up to court, pled non-guilty. Eventually the charges were dropped, and now I'm suing the city of Philadelphia with the Philadelphia ACLU for violation of my First Amendment rights. This is being grouped together with two other cases, two other Philadelphia residents. I believe they're both Philadelphia residents. The ACLU is pushing for more systemic change in the city than just getting us, the three parties, money. They want to re-educate the police that are there, let them know what the role of media is, and keep journalists safe. Safe doing their job and keeping the electorate informed, including keeping them informed of what the police are doing. Yeah.
But you're definitely not the first citizen journalist to be arrested. There were
Certainly not, no.
quite a few people arrested during the Occupy movement and since.
Mm-hmm. Thankfully, I managed to not get arrested during Occupy. I'm not entirely sure how that happened, given how close to the action I was a lot of the time. It's a real shame that the role of the journalist is to maintain the flow of information into the electorate, and that they're being stopped. I mean, that's what I have to say about my story. Yeah. Oh, of course. I'm here right now today because I was. Last week was my deposition in Philadelphia for the court case, and I heard this was going on, and I worked with the DC Mic Check, which was the newspaper that preceded the DC Media Group, I believe. And I'm happy to see everybody here, and everybody's doing a lot of great work.
Well, we still have the DC Mic Check is still online. Right. We still do post to it occasionally. There are some discussions on what we're going to be doing, how that's going to round in the future. One question: how do you see the role of citizen journalism? Do you see it growing? Do you see it
I see
changing?
it shifting a lot, actually. For the past couple hundred years, especially since maybe the 1920s, since the start, or even before that, since the penny press, the means of information and mass production have been in the hands of the publishers, the people who own the presses. And we're seeing a shift so that the control over those means is becoming more diffuse across the whole population. And I'm starting to think that our roles as journalists, our traditional roles as journalists, as being the people that go out and research and find the most relevant information for the people to consume, is shifting to now it's our job to enable the people to speak for themselves, because now they can, and now they can talk to each other in mass. I certainly think investigative journalism will always have a place. The person who's there sorting through all the little nitty-gritty details, all the opinions shared.
On an African proverb, it simply says that until the lions have their historians, the tales of the hunt will continue to glorify the hunter. So again, it goes back to who is telling the story, whose perspective is getting told, whose perspective is not getting told. And if billionaire corporations are the main authors of the story, then you can rest assured that our interests are not being served in those stories. So that was the main fuel in the fire. And also, we was the vanguard of the independent radio movement, where we see the promise of hundreds of low-power FM stations getting licensed and coming aboard. We was a precursor to that, and we're looking forward to expanding our content that we've developed over the past 2 years, and solidifying a new network of independent media, so that as my business partner Alex Lawson phrase coins, broadcasting truth into the halls of Congress. We're in Anacostia, which is like the poorest, most destitute, neglected area of the nation's capital. So where we see massive wealth, massive gentrification, massive investment, we still also at the same time see a city that has a high literacy rate, a high infant mortality rate, high AIDS infection rate, high dropout rate. So it's a tale of two cities, and so we need to tell both sides of the story.
What are some of the challenges facing a grassroots media radio station like yours? Tell us about some of your challenges and what you need.
Well, not to be a cliche, but it's the golden rule. Whoever has a goal has a rule. So whoever has the biggest bucks get to make the biggest splash, the biggest noise, the biggest impact, and unfortunately get the biggest amount of attention of the masses. It is a rare breed that looks out for the truth that we push. By the sheer fact that we don't accept money from companies like Walmart and places that McDonald's and things that we don't toe the line with corporations, and our whole bottom line is not profit driven. We're here to deliver that perspective. It's not getting told. It's not a motive. It's not a financial motivation to do that. And there's very little funds available to support that. But by sheer will of making it happen, on a wing and a prayer, our work has begun to catch the attention of those who ordinarily have written us off just by the fact that we survived. And so now we're looking forward for a prosperous new year in 2014, and turning the corner and expanding our reach and our platform. But I think that people need to remember is that they can't wait for funding, and they can't wait for permission. You have to make it happen with what you have. And I think, again, the tide has turned on the availability of resources and technology that has empowered people to become their own sources of media. So rather than being constant consumers, they can themselves become producers. And so we train people as much as possible, each one teach one, to make sure that we empower those around us to do the same.
How can the public hear how can they contact your station, or what is your frequency? What is their means to
They can contact the NSA for all of our information, and if that's not available to them, then they can reach us at reactradio.com.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jamal.
Thank you for having us. Congratulations on your anniversary here at DC Independent Media. We're proud of y'all. We're looking at you guys as partnership in this battle for truth-telling.
For a year, you've been telling me you were going to have me on your radio program for an interview, but now I get to interview you, so I beat you out.
Funny how
things happen. Alex, tell us what some of your challenges are at React Radio. And also, if you could talk a little bit in the context of citizen journalism, how do you feel that you're serving the people as a citizen journalist radio program?
First off, just thanks for having both Kimon and I in React Radio. We definitely, it's a great anniversary to have to celebrate. And I think what it is it's actually a celebration of something even bigger. It's something that Coulter mentioned, which is the means of production of journalism, of media, are lowering to the point where new voices can enter and start telling stories that are not told. And I think everyone really understands, you turn on Fox News and there's obvious bias towards the Republican Party. You can turn on MSNBC and there's obvious bias towards the Democratic Party. But really the huge bias is the stories that are not told. It's very difficult to even see those stories because they are excluded systematically by the billion-dollar corporations who own and control almost all of the media that people consume. Since the broadcast era, since the era where if you wanted to, you paid your money and you got your message in front of millions of Americans, and the only way they didn't see it is if they got up physically and went into the kitchen or went to the bathroom while the television show was on. But now, actually, there's a huge sea change in how consumers consume media. So it's happening on both the production and the consumption side. Consumers now have all the choice. They can go after and get exactly the media that they're looking for in the type that they want, right? They can put it on a podcast that then syncs with their radio in their car and plays it to them while they're driving. A connected car can be listening to LA-based radio in DC, and this is the future, and this is what the giant broadcasters are petrified of. They're petrified of our new voices. The old model basically said, use your money to buy up all of the stations everywhere, shut down all independent voices, produce one homogenous sort of media, and then send it out to all of those stations that you own. And since everyone knows, since Reagan, they took out all of the restrictions of how many you could own, so that markets are completely dominated now. Once that starts to break up, because people can go on the internet, they can find your stream, they can go on to Ustream, they can go on to livestream, they can go on to YouTube, and they can see what's happening at Zuccotti and Occupy, and they can actually start not only seeing it, but they're going to be commenting, and they're going to be taking part in it. And it's such a small step from there to saying, I'm going to go down to the park, and I'm actually going to just bring my iPhone, and I'm going to hold it up, and I'm going to put the app Ustream on, and I'm going to just live stream this. And now there's a whole bunch of people out there, and we're all going to tell the story. And maybe the police officers, some of them dealt with Occupy very well. Some of them did. I saw that. There was professionalism there, but some of them were out there, to shut it down, to shut the story down. But when you have all of the storytellers empowered to tell those stories, they can't silence everybody. And I think Kimon and I have worked together for many, many years, and we're always united by the idea that when a person has no voice, then people can ignore them. When a person can't tell their own story, they can be ignored. But as soon as you give them a megaphone to yell in the face of the people with power, it's really hard to ignore that.
Yeah, it is.
So we always see ourselves as not only producing this and telling stories, but also as being a place that fosters collaboration amongst all of the different voices that are coming into the media scene now.
Can you give some examples where you have been able to take those voices of the people, and successfully get them out there? Maybe one or two examples of that resonate in your mind.
How about I do one and Kimon does one?
Sounds great.
So I'm partial to, actually, we should credit him actually as a partner in the creation of We Act Radio, because David Schuster, who was part of the media infrastructure, right? I mean, he was on MSNBC, and then there was a big corporate, one corporation sold to another corporation, and they pushed him out. They threw him out of his place of making media. And he came to We Act Radio, he came to Kimon and I. We said, look what we're doing. And he gladly joined with us. And he said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to produce every show right here from the heart of Anacostia, from 1918 Martin Luther King Avenue in Southeast. And I'm going to do that. And he did that, and he made his show. It's syndicated now into into 5 markets. That's all through We Act Radio. In the end, Al Jazeera America actually scooped him right out of our little studio with his production staff. But the thing is, he's still telling the truth. He's still, right now, Al Jazeera America producing long-form pieces that I think are really some of the best journalism out there. So that is just something that I'm proud of, being a springboard for something like that.
Next time we need to get a contract. Come on.
Yeah, being a footnote in a lot of success stories. Again, shout out to David Schuster because he put his reputation on the line for us in the beginning, so that was big. And I think it kind of like led into the next one that we had, which was the launching of Rock Newman Show. Rock Newman Show, for those who are unfamiliar, is a multi-millionaire media mogul who made his money in the boxing game. And he came to us and actually on a program I was producing, an interview, and he said, hey, you know, he wants to spend his next 10 years of his life doing radio, and that this felt like home to him. And so the biggest splash we made with him was we had like every mayor in the history of DC in our studio, except for Fenty, because he knows how we feel about him. And we had, you know, C-SPAN, every major news media network in our studio broadcasting his show because him and Alex had somehow gotten hold of the Ohio hero, was Charles Ramsey story. Yeah. So we was a toast of the town. We was the biggest, we was the only outlet that could get an interview with him in DC. No one else could get him. It was exclusive. Yeah.
And CNN brought their cameras to our studio and set them up to get our shots from that show.
So we've made a lot of noise, a lot of headlines, and they try to mute us out, but you know, with that type of support and that type of content, it's overly compelling that people are interested in other stories being told.
That's a really good, just really quickly, that story of Charles Ramsey is pretty emblematic, because after Charles Ramsey was interviewed, he actually said, I'm not doing any more media, because he felt, and I think rightly, that the media were basically making fun of him, that the media could only tell his story from this comic relief sort of way. They wouldn't recognize the heroism that it took and the danger that he was in, and so he said no, but Rock and We Act Radio were able to say, look, you come on and you tell your story the way you want to tell it, and make sure that it gets out there. And that's exactly what happened.
Thanks, Alex, very much. And again, thank you all of the panelists for coming tonight to the DC Media Group's anniversary. You've all brought forward a lot of issues, a lot of important issues that we're going to discuss more in detail now. And we're going to open up the panel to a discussion. If you all want to start talking about some of the issues we've talked about in more detail. One question that we have been discussing, and one of our primary goals in independent media is how do we take all of our individual efforts, like We Act Radio, Voices of the 99 is another one, DC Media Group, Occupy Wall Street has media functions. How do we take all of these groups, Global Revolution is another big one. How do we take all of these groups and tie them together in one consistent node and then get the information out to the Americans that we want to contact? Medea, maybe we can start with you. What do you think we need to do? Some ideas.
Well, I'm not sure getting together in one node is a good idea. I mean, given the way our government is working and not only the spying, but the way that groups have been infiltrated and attacked, I think it's great that there's all these independent groups and that this is really a grassroots movement. I mean, each one of them, it would be great if they got got stronger, if they had more outreach, if they had more ability to reach more people. But I think the beauty of this is the nature that there is no hierarchy in it, and that it probably means that organizations can act more quickly, can take advantage of moments. For example, I mean, we had this great protest yesterday, but we couldn't tell the media what we were going to be doing, because if we told the media we were going to do civil disobedience at the American Museum of American History, then they would have tipped off the police would have been there, we wouldn't have been able to do any of that. So the independent media folks like you just roll with punches. You just go with us and see what's going to happen, and then you see that it's a fantastic action that is not covered by the mainstream media, but thankfully covered by an independent group. So I say just keep it on the each one grow its own capacity, and coordinate and come together from time to time through things like yearly gatherings or conferencing or other kinds of ways to get together. But I think it's nice to stay independent.
We had a meeting with the Young Turks some time ago, and in that meeting he had coined the phrase that, create an echo chamber. And albeit I completely agree with the idea that, we should have, the latter move to, I don't think we should have this monolithic network. But I do think that we should collaborate a lot more. We should share information and resources. We should share content. We should share contacts. There's no reason why someone that was on React Radio shouldn't have been the same interview shared with other networks, and again, if something happens, then we all should hit it at the same time to create that echo chamber that, the jinx, the phrase that he coined, and I repeat it often because I think it's a beautiful way to think. I think we need to collaborate a little bit more along the lines so that we are, working as a group of independent units rather than a herd of cats. If we could do that, I think we could really make a lot of noise, a little bit more damage, and I think we'll strengthen all of us.
Yeah, I think that I'm hearing two different points of view, but taking maybe the stories and sharing those stories, and that's what I was getting at a minute ago, Medea, is let's say DC Media Group puts up a story about what happened yesterday, and by the way, that was a fantastic action. I just wish I'd been there. But let's just say that we have 20 different folks that are connected at a node, and we send that story and everybody picks it up. Unfortunately, Kevin Zeese couldn't be here tonight, but we had intended to bring up the fact that Popular Resistance is doing that already. They take stories from many different sources, and they put them on their website, and it gets thousands of hits, and that's what's been happening with us. Culture.
Yeah, again, getting back to like the shift from us being journalists to us being the people responsible for training journalists, training citizen journalists, because people watch us, what we're doing on the street, they're seeing what we're doing. If it sounds like what your ideal is like a single website that all of the content gets posted to, something like that, a single outlet.
Possibly.
Because something like that, I mean, I really like the format of the website reddit.com. What they do is anybody can submit a link and people vote for whether it makes it to the front page. I think that the users deciding what is actually newsworthy is a far more reliable model than editors doing it. But more importantly, if we want this single source of news to be accessible to the general public, it has to be, we have to reach out to the right. We have to reach out to those people on that side of the aisle, let them have their voice, let them have their say, and then let the people decide what's actually more newsworthy. That would maintain the integrity, the journalistic integrity of the organization, whatever it was. But I mean, maintaining a perception of neutrality is extremely important in order for people to trust you and the source.
Travis, you have a web page, and you use your web page to make press releases about the actions you're doing. How do you feel that we can help get your word out from the street into our newsroom? What can we do to help you get your news out? Or what can you do to reach out to independent media?
I think it's really more on our end of taking the extra step of reaching out, letting you know what's going on. But even more importantly, having the conversations together, not us saying this is what we're doing, but prior to doing it, have conversations with the people that are going to help us get it to the masses.
Thousands, tens of thousands of people who've watched the entire thing. That means they're not just consuming it as a news product, because there were some boring portions of it when we were just walking to catch up. It's because they were participating through this technology that they felt that their voices were raised along with the folks who were actually in the street, making noise, and not to crow too much, but man, have we made it really hard for the plutocrats on Wall Street around Social Security, and now, I think by just constantly hammering at that for years, we've got them on their heels, and now they're playing defense and telling reasons why we can't expand Social Security for everyone. So I think those are the opportunities that I'm always searching for, is how can we, use the technology and the media of We Act Radio and put it together with existing organizations who have an audience who want to get that media to them.
And Alex, what you were saying about plutocrats, we were looking at the numbers. We found that six companies, or 90% of U.S. media is owned by 6 companies. That's alarming to me. I mean,
right.
This independent media or alternative media really is a threat to them.
It's a massive threat. I mean, it's the reason why they accumulate the media, right? I mean, there's a reason why these and their newsroom, when one of their products kills people, media will be on the same page on that story very quickly, right? They're going to be talking about who could have foreseen, an accident that no one could have seen, any da-da-da-da-da. It's just this, it happens every time there's something like this. It's the independent voices, the independent media who go and find the people who can say, lots of people foresaw this. Lots of people were saying, don't use these chemicals close to the drinking water, that the deep water, deep water horizon, the oil spill was likely to happen. It's independent media who will tell the truth, and that's why those corporations, they're not quaking in their boots yet, because they still have so much dominance. But they're starting to get scared, and by 2020, when every single American-made car coming off the line is connected to the internet, which removes the geographicness of the radio they listen to, right? And they can listen to whatever they want streaming through the internet. That's when folks start getting really scared of these independent voices.
We have the ability to take questions online. If you would like to send a question to us on Twitter at DC Media Group, we'll take them. In fact, we have one right now. And the question to the panelists that just came to us is, how do we get people out into the streets? What do we need to do to not only notify people of these issues like Monsanto and drones and fracking and labor? How do we get people out into the streets? And is that the solution? Travis, what do you think?
I would just start by saying we have to talk to people. Right? Too many organizations or leader groups say that they're representing the people, but haven't taken the time to, whether it's knock on doors, go to meetings, or spend the hard work of a real grassroots organization and to speak with people. And I'm confident, especially here in the city, that once you know what people really care about, you need to find out what they're willing to fight for and stand up for. But you only know that by asking them, and I think that'll get us onto a good start of them really coming out and taking charge of the community. But without asking them and just assuming that we know what they really care about, I just think we're kind of not giving them due credit.
Medea, what do you think? How do we get people out to the street?
Well, I think that unfortunately, even the progressive media that we have, what they do is they cover things as they're happening or after they've happened. And that's great, but we need help getting the word out before something happens. And maybe this is where I disagree with Coulter in terms of a neutral media. I want a media that's out there with us to say, hey, mark your calendars. This March 8th, International Women's Day, we want all these women out in the street to do this, or whatever it is, we want to build up to things. And we really need media that's going to help us build up the movement. I think people want to get out in the streets. I think there's a lot more potential activism that we can't tap into because we don't have the ability to reach those people. And that's where the media could have such a synergetic effect. You take a show that's like my favorite show, Democracy Now!, Amy Goodman. Amy Goodman, she does not think her role is to get people out in the streets. Her role is to cover it when they're out in the streets. And maybe that's the right decision for her to make, but I still think there's this missing gap there of media that's going to really be arm in arm with us to build the movement and get people out in the streets.
What do you think?
I think that's a fantastic idea. I mean, I think that that's exactly what's needed, and I think that Kimon and I and all of We Act Radio, we tried to make that, but we should double down in 2014 that we do that. We do that pre-coverage, and having organized big events, I know that is oftentimes the crucial thing to getting the turnout is actually being able to tell people about it. And you're right. I mean, like when we've done the live streaming of the drones hearing, it was extremely successful and I think extremely powerful. But why didn't we have the fact that it was going to happen on across as many shows in the progressive sphere as possible? And I think that that's something that we should really work on. Kevin Zeese and Margaret Flower's show, which is also on We Act Radio, Clearing the Fog, does a very good job of that. And then I like to look to them also for using the multiple platforms, because they'll have it right there. It's online, it's on our radio station, it's on, it's put in a blog format, which I also think is very powerful. But that's something that we need to do. Is I do think we also need to tell the story of us winning, and I think that it's really important for people to truly understand how fragile the power structure of the plutocrats is, that when we do stand together in the streets, they are incredibly frightened because they know their whole thing is based on smoke and mirrors. And we should show and we should crow when we do have successes, when we have victories. We need to tell those stories. We need to make sure that the people who stood up and took part in that and made that happen recognize that that feeling, that win, that's power. And that's what happens when you stand arm in arm with people, is power. And people power will beat money power every single time. So we need both of those sides together, I think, to get people into the streets.
Yeah, we certainly are on a war footing because of the issues. They're so compelling, and there's so many of them. It's hard sometimes to know which issue to cover first. But I totally agree with you. I think that we also need to report and cover where we've been successful and what we've done. I know that there have been some recent things that have happened in the news that show that we're having an effect. Medea was speaking about the fact that the Peace Camp insurrection, which was just up the street, literally 1 block away at the Capitol, that was instrumental in getting people knowing about the potential for a Syrian war and for a broader conflict. You're going to say something?
I think the best way to get people into the streets is getting them talking to each other, letting them know that they're not alone in issues. Showing people, hey, this is Twitter, hey, this is Tumblr, this is Flickr, this is how you use it, this is how you express yourself over them. We have to let people talk to each other. We have to enable that. And then they, as a group, will come to the streets once they realize they're not alone.
So let's talk about, Coca brings up a very important point. Let's talk about social media. How social media is changing the media paradigm. I hate the word paradigm, but it is what it is. But how is social media, how is it changing reporting? Medea?
Well, I could speak more to how it's changing activism and doing work on a global level. It's just mind-blowing. We had our action yesterday that was commemorating the 12th anniversary of the creation of the Guantanamo prison, and at the same time, because they knew we were doing it over Twitter, the families of the Guantanamo prisoners in Yemen decided that they were going to do a protest at the same time in front of the U.S. Embassy. And so there we were tweeting between Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, and the White House, showing each other the pictures of the demonstrations, telling each other what was happening, and it's quite fantastic. So we have the ability, thanks to social media, and I would say Twitter particularly, to reach people all over the globe in practically real time and to be inspiring each other with our stories. We had asked the lawyer for one of the prisoners, whose name is Shakir Amr, and he's a resident of the UK. He's been in prison for 12 years now, if he could send a message to us. And we got the message sent out, and then thanks to social media, managed to send that all over the world. And we see the comments on the page where we put that up on Facebook coming from everywhere from Saudi Arabia to England to Germany, of people being able to see the same message, to comment with each other, because that's a great thing on the social media, is you're not just seeing something and that's it, you're part of the conversation, like Alex was saying, and the conversation just keeps on going, and in the case of work like we're doing, it really is global conversation.
It certainly is. One of our photographers photographers and Nutter took a photograph at the National Museum of History and tweeted it out. And within an hour, it had been shared by over 150, or it had been retweeted. And God knows how many people actually saw that photograph. But the photograph is still actually circulating on the internet right now. How do you, Travis, how do you use social media to publicize your events?
Well, like you mentioned, we have the RDC YouTube page, but as someone that's hasn't been the best on social media, actually that's my New Year's resolution, to do better. You find that places like Twitter is the new news. I remember a few years ago we had the earthquake, so when it happened, I'm running around in the middle of the night, going outside to make sure my house is okay. And before I could turn the TV on, my daughter had told me there was an earthquake. So now you can get that real-time media at your fingertips. I just think it goes back to the community. We have to let our folk know that this is available, but make sure they're looking for the right stuff. It's good because you can actually pick what you want to follow, like what you want to see, what you want to hear. So this really opens up doors for us. It's just, once again, us coming together and taking our time to make sure we're putting out it's accurate and real and makes sense to people, that people are care about, not a lot of fluff. And I think that will get, when we go back to how do we get people in the streets, I think we're putting up good information in social media, and we mean what we say, and we do what we say, once again, because that also touches your credibility. If you're all over the place and all type of stuff, you kind of can lose credibility. But if we're doing it the right way, I think it could really enhance the movement.
Yeah, it's certainly an advantage in having social media. We've been using it since the beginning, and it has really helped us take it to another level. One of the actions that I remember We Act Radio was at the climate rally. You had your wagon right up front, you had cameras on it, you had speakers. Who came up with the idea of creating literally a roving wagon media station for We Act? And how did you put that together? What did you use?
That's a really good question. I'm going to answer, I'm going to cheat and you jump in and say it was a gestalt effort. It really was,
And you have a generator on it, you have, I remember it was like 1 or 2 cameras.
Actually, we had 6 cameras for Forward on Climate, because we had the webcams up on these big sticks so you could see the whole crowd.
I remember it because I almost got run over by it.
Exactly. I think it's necessity is the mother of all invention.
That's right.
And we were talking with 350.org, and we had been, and we've been talking with some of the organizers of the action. We knew this is a story. This is a story that is ignored. This is the story why 6 corporations own the media, is so that they don't tell the story of what our environmental degradation is doing to the globe. We needed to tell this story. And then we just tried really, really, really hard. But we had one previous, we actually had live streamed the Supreme Court ruling on Obamacare from the steps of the Supreme Court with David Schuster, outside of the pen of the media, right from the steps of the Supreme Court.
Broke the story.
And we did. We broke the story. We got it right before Fox and CNN got it wrong. And actually, in an office, my old boss was watching We Act Radio, and everyone else in the office was watching CNN. So they all ran out and were like, "Oh no!" And he ran out saying, "Yes," because he got the right information from us. But it really was we needed to do it. We needed to get this story, and It has a lot to do with the way that Kimon and I and our other partner, Cliff Schechter, and everyone involved in WEAC Radio, we built this thing from the ground up. Like, there was nothing there, and then we built the whole studio. We've learned a lot.
Oh, yes.
And along the way, one of them was how to fit enough stuff in a wagon. And we're confident you'll like our next setup later. We won't be able to run you over with it.
I appreciate that. You know, you brought up an issue about people getting involved in broadcasting. The FCC has licensed low-watt radio. Do you know about that?
It was a part of that. We've been working hand in hand with the Prometheus project from start to finish with the launching of our program, our station rather, and their initiative. They built that entire legislation. They are the lobbyists that are most responsible for that FCC ruling, and we've been in contact with them, and we're looking forward to the first stations coming online and creating a new, clear channel network for the people. But it remains to be seen exactly who is getting the licenses. We suspect that a good majority of them are going to be religious programming and things of that nature. But that notwithstanding, there's going to be a number of progressive independent voices added to the mix, and we're looking forward to taking advantage of that. But just to back up a little bit, one of the things you had said I didn't mention when you say getting people out in the street, people out in the street all over the world, except for here. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to make that clear. And then I think what is missing here is that we need to go back to political education classes. Like, people need to be made known. They're ignorant. I mean, they don't even know who Howard Zinn is. I mean, they don't ever heard of Eugene Debs. They have, so you can't get a man, to read a book if he's hungry. So we have to address some real issues in our community to get people, like he was saying, what do they care about? So we have to find issues that are affecting everybody across the board. And I know, in fact, in D.C. it's housing.
Housing in schools, education.
Well, schools is very important, but it's an issue that affects everyone. Is housing. Because if I don't have a kid, I may not feel as passionate about education. But everyone is affected by housing. And if you can frame an argument and put forth a platform that addresses that in a very real progressive way, you get a lot of feedback. And I like what our DC is doing. But Prometheus project, back to your original question, the first stations are due to come online in the fall of this year. And Prometheus project is based out of Philadelphia, and we're going to be working more closely with them once the first stations do come online. We've done a number of conference calls with networks across the country, and we've been willing to offer our expertise so that people don't replicate some of the trial and errors we learned along the way, so that we can get them up and running in a professional capacity as quick as possible.
You should say that again, so that people don't have to learn what we learned through trial and error. If you're going to start a radio station, you should call us.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
lots of things that we can tell you how not to do.
Well, then reach out to Tacoma. They're about to get a license, or they're working on getting a license. I think that they're Tacoma radio station.
Yeah,
They're about to get their license. I've actually spoken to the lady. They've had classes at the Goethe Institute. So
yeah.
Okay, we'll make the introduction.
definitely,
where voices
I need to
are
get your
99%
card. Wait, I have your card. Yeah, definitely. Do you have any questions for?
What's important? We need to shift to a model where they can tell each other what's important and reach a consensus on that. I think the internet, like again, Reddit, is an extremely has a lot of potential for that kind of thing. I know that there are a lot of people out there looking at this problem from different angles, and I have a lot of hope. I do. So.
Travis?
I'd like to say thanks again, but I'm extremely excited. This has been a learning experience for me. But to know that we have groups like DC Media Group, we have radio that are willing to have the tough conversations about tough issues where other people won't. I think it's very important that we, once again, let people know these outlets are there for the conversations that they want to be had. And like I said, too often people are afraid to have the conversations because of the difficulty, right? Like we're talking about, people don't want to talk about AIDS. People don't want to talk about homeless or hungry kids. Most of those people are sitting, living high on the hill. But the people that we're most concerned about don't want to have these conversations. So I think it's important that they know that we're here and that we push to make this available to them.
Well, I think that we live in Orwellian times, and that people should, even those who are conditioned by the entertainment diet that they've been spoon-fed here in the States, cannot ignore the onslaught of independent media and the system, the power structure. From Aaron Swartz, who's helpful in starting Reddit, what happened to him, what happened to Michael Hastings, what has happened to Julian Assange, what is happening to this NSA power structure. There's a new story coming out almost every week now. These are mainly independent media outlets that are breaking these stories and carrying this weight, and then the corporate media structure follows suit. Because once the independent media gets a hold of it and there's enough noise about it, then they have to say something. Then they have to cover it. And like what's happening in New Jersey with Christie, God bless him. I'm thrilled to see that. This is a bonfire. So until we really come together and figure out what we're going to actually do with this information and challenging the way business as usual has been done, I think that we just got to keep plugging away, because I really think that we're looking at a dam that has many cracks, and they are trying to plug it with fingers, and it's a matter of time before the water's going to come gushing. And I just think that we need to be, wary of where we are when that happens.
I think, it's kind of piggybacking on what everybody had said, is it's a cry for the consumers of media to actually become even better, that they take the media that they want, the stories that they want to see more of, and they help get those stories out there as well, and asking the audience to become more than just a passive participant in media. And that is where we are now, the death of the broadcast era, where things were just beamed out and you sat and it hit you in the face. Now there's so much out there, and it's important to note there's a lot of garbage out there too, right? So we need savvy media consumers, people who can sift through the garbage and the propaganda and find the news, and when they do, trust that source and they understand this is a trustworthy source, get the word out there to everybody else, and that's really how we're going to make this thing take hold and catch fire going forward, is when the audience feels as empowered a participant, an actor, and they have that agency, and they understand that it's on them as well. They can't just sit back. And to make this the America that we all want this America to be, everyone needs to step up, do something, and engage, and I think really tell the stories that aren't being told.
Yeah, that's a depth. In fact, we were having a conversation yesterday about media and accuracy, and well, actually we were talking about that today. One of the original DC Mic Check one of the original from that collective had said that it's better to have accuracy than to have something exciting and full of fluff, because you lose your credibility when you're inaccurate. It's going to be really hard to get rid of the bias, but you darn what better be accurate. I wanted to thank all of you for coming to celebrate this night with us. Your input is very valuable, and hopefully you all have gained some information and some knowledge about independent media, and maybe will be inspired to pick up and create a collective of your own, is what we did exactly a year ago. We were a group of folks who had skills and just decided that we wanted to do something, to put the truth out, to speak about the issues of our time. So again, I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. I believe that we're going to change to another. James MacArthur is joining us. James, thank you. Thanks for coming. Please tell us what organization you're with, and give us some comment about independent media. What you feel its role in reporting the news is.
As I'm sure it's been covered before I got here, of course, it's a very critical role because well, first of all, my primary blog is BaltimoreSpectator.com. But between the Twitter feed and the YouTube and there's probably 6 or 7 different places where my work comes out regularly, but most of it ends up there. But as far as independent media, the art of watchdog reporting seems to be, it's almost non-existent with most mainstream. Every now and then you will see something really insightful that does really deep, to throw a bone at us. And it makes you say, well, wow, they're really doing something, but day to day they're actually not. And it's tough work doing that when you go to these places like across the street at the Hill, everybody starts looking at you funny. Wait, you're that guy that dug up their dirt on Senator so-and-so. So it makes it kind of unpopular. People want to, just be able to go in and be popular, get their paycheck, and continue to access and be invited to the nice parties that are held in these places around the Hill all the time and all of that. So it's not very popular in those circles. But then you have people like myself, and I'm sure you guys who, those things don't necessarily appeal to us. We want to just get the truth out, and whatever the cost would be. And sometimes the cost is very high. I spent 6 months in jail right now in Alabama. What's that guy's name? Robert Schuller, is that his name? I forgot to pronounce his name. I mean, they will find all kinds of pretense to lock you up and say, well, this is the real reason why, but it's not. I mean, anyone can see through it, but when you start digging dirt on public entities or public individuals, elected officials or anything like that, you become very unpopular in a lot of circles. I think with the masses, with the people, your popularity increases, but with the power brokers, let's shut this guy down, let's shut this girl down, let's shut this group down. Or if they don't shut you down, they find ways to discredit you, whether it be the online trolls and plans who masquerade as average everyday citizens, but they're actually being paid by the government to sit all day long and troll the internet and come up with that alternative voice against the real alternative media. There's a lot of those too. It's misinformation campaign, a disinformation campaign, rather.
You're talking about on social media, like a Twitter.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, tell us a little bit about your blog and what you do with it and what stories you cover.
Well, you know, I know what I was covering versus what I have been hoping to get back into recently. Baltimore Spectator.com is very local. It's Baltimore. I dabble into a lot of the national stuff from time to time because I observe it. I think it's important, and I have opinions on it. But it's not my expertise. I don't have a lot of the sources like I do in Baltimore. Primarily, the focus of Baltimore Spectator traditionally in the, I don't know, 5-6 years that it's been around, has been local government accountability. You know, is the government doing what they're supposed to be doing for us, by us, with our money? And a large part of that focus has shifted to law enforcement because I became very disturbed with the increase in militarization of police. It's happened everywhere, and I can't talk about it happening everywhere. I can talk about where I live. And naturally, I became a victim of it eventually. But I became particularly appalled when the Occupy movement was broken up. Peaceful protests broken up with heavily armed, you know, SWAT.
I have a video on it on my phone
Yeah.
that I still have.
I was there shooting pictures and taking video by myself, and that really disturbing. You know, in a city where the murder rate is out of hand, and they tell you they don't know the motives for most of them, they don't have any suspects, and most of them go unsolved, but yet still you see where the police resources are being done. There were homeless advocates kicked out from City Hall, their annual sleepover, by SWAT. It's like, really? I mean, we could, you know, we have a need for police, but the need for it is not to terrorize and intimidate. Everyday citizens are just trying to raise awareness of various issues. But that's a large part of what they do. They end up being pawns for the power brokers, just to put fear. And by the way, if you feel like rising up and being an independent journalist to expose stuff, this is what we're going to do to you. So don't even think about it. And for you mainstreamers, if you slip out of line, we have a place for you. There's a bed waiting for you in a 5x8 cell, or whatever they are, that over 200-year-old facility in Baltimore.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I apologize I wasn't here sooner. This is
That's all right.
fantastic.
We got your word on the record.
Thank you.
So now we're going to turn it over to General Knox, who's going to give a presentation. Everybody, thank you. I want to read you this. That's I definitely need you to contact. You got some talking to do.
To the conference room, where there's food, there's beer and wine.
Yeah, you're going to join us for some cake?
There's cake. Somebody needs to take a picture of the cake.
Before the ground house.
Somebody needs to take a picture of the cake and tweet out the picture of the cake. Oh, yeah, because the cake is beauteous. Presentation is a pretty big word.
It's all you.
All right, I wanted 5 minutes to talk about something I've done sort of tangential to the media group in the last year, and that is probably about a year ago, I had a crisis of, I guess, of thought. It's like I became a deer staring into the headlights, and I didn't know what to do. And that crisis was that I realized that I didn't know where to find the truth anymore. So we know the mainstream media isn't telling us the truth. We know they're biased. We know corporate PR is not telling us the truth. They're biased. So I was engaging with the activist media people, and I looked around and I was like, God, we're not telling the truth either, right? So where is the truth? So I started doing some Ustream programs where I talked about how to help people figure out if they were consuming true information or not. And after 3 or 4 episodes of that, I realized that wasn't really helping me. Because the problem is you're not going to find the truth. And when you find the truth, something really bad happens, which is that you consume the truth through your bias. So even when the truth is there right in front of you, if you're not interested in the truth, you will discount it. And I want to just go over like a couple of incidents. And it's interesting because Kimon was here earlier talking, and one of the not really incidents, but one of the things that dawned on me in the last couple of years that I think most people don't really register. We had RDC here, we had Kimon, with people talking about minimum wage and how that's so important. And you know, to most people in America, they're like, I don't really care. These people, if they want more money, they should get a better job. And you hear it over and over again. Because what they don't realize is that it's not the people who are getting paid minimum wage who pay the price for only getting minimum wage. Because the truth is their wages are getting subsidized with SNAP benefits and housing benefits and earned income tax credits. Who's paying the price from the minimum wage is everybody else, right? These people are okay. They're okay. But the problem is that once you add the minimum wage and all the subsidies, they're at the same level as the middle income earners, which means we don't have a middle class anymore, right? We don't have a middle class. We need to jack up the minimum wage, and that'll push up the moderate wage, and that'll help our economy. And that story's not getting told, right? And so if you notice what happened with the Walmart protests, the Black Friday protests, the way that Walmart and their PR people fought it was to say there aren't any Walmart workers on these strike lines, these protest lines. And that's how they made people not care about it, right? But that's not the issue. Walmart isn't screwing their workers, they're screwing everybody else. So that's part of the truth that's not getting told, is who does the news affect, and who's, you know, who needs to get the real news. I wanted to talk about a couple other instances that Rob and I reported on. We went to New Jersey and reported on Hurricane Sandy aftermath, and it was tragic. You know, we got to the seashore, where rows of houses were gone. They were just gone. And we interviewed this really beautiful guy. He was really great. And it was devastating. And he's there with his house, and it's devastating. And, you know, there's no mainstream media around him. Like, what's the story? The people whose houses are gone aren't there. And he's there working his ass off. But you know what his concern is? And I'm looking at Rob right now. His concern was that the insurance company was not going to pay to match the shake shingles on his house, the replacement ones, that they weren't going to match the existing shingles. That was his concern. That was the truth of that story, and that truth is not appealing, and it's not interesting to people, and it doesn't make you sympathetic. So the truth is really a problem. Another thing that we covered was the Amnesty International Human Rights Conference, where Captain Wright, who represents colleague Sheikh Mohammed, spoke. He spoke about the hunger strikes and the fact that the hunger strikes at Guantanamo were happening because the new commander took away people's second blanket and the pictures of their family members. They had a new commander come in who treated them less than human beings, and so they went on hunger strike. And I never heard that story after that. I never heard it again. And that was the real story. It wasn't this huge issue about, you know, indefinite detention and not having trials. It was because they couldn't have another blanket. And that was the real story, was, you know, about humanity. It wasn't about anything else. Luckily, 60 Minutes ended up covering it, so that's good, but it took months. Another story that we didn't really cover, but that I encountered, was Andy Shalale, who's the owner of Busboys and Poets. We covered a completely different event, but he spoke for a little while. Andy's family is from Iraq. And I didn't know this, and I don't know if other people didn't know this, but I didn't know this. Before we went into Iraq, the Sunnis and the Shias in Iraq got along fine. And while we were there, we this division, where they live in walled communities now, and they're guards, and you don't go into a Shia neighborhood unless you're Shia, and you don't go into a Sunni neighborhood unless you're Sunni. And we created that. Whatever happens in Iraq now is because of us. And that's a truth that the mainstream media isn't going to cover. So I want to talk about some of these things that, you know, I just learned in the last couple of years, and I realized that the truth, we're not going to give you the truth, and the mainstream media isn't going to give you the truth, and corporate PR is going to give you the truth. But if you take it all in and make your own opinion and decide what you're going to do and then speak out about it, that's all there is. There is no truth. There's just what you believe in enough to speak out. That's what I want to talk about. Go speak out. That's it. I think Rob's next.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for watching us, consuming our media. We're doing what we can.
Okay. So, hello everybody. I'm here to talk about outreach and networking, collaborating with different media groups. Since the beginning of DC Media Group, we've done an awful lot of collaborating with people like Code Pink, with We Act Radio. I'll go into different examples, but I'd like to try and mention all these groups so I don't forget. Revolution.
The work we've been doing.
Okay. Most recently, John and I followed the Gezi piano man.
Yeah, his name is David Marillo, and he brought his piano on a peace mission, a stop the violence mission, and played his piano right by the Capitol. And then he took it, we went over to the Lincoln Memorial, and he played there. We did a video, we did a write-up of that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of collaboration going on. Code Pink, Medea Benjamin really nailed it, I think. You know, having them reach out to us and us having that opportunity to have their voice heard, where every once in a while you see it on mainstream media where they'd be screaming, you know, in a chamber in Congress. You didn't see them at the White House. And looking back on this past year, one of my favorite protests was Medea and Ty and just a handful of people protesting about Guantanamo Bay. You know, it was small, and anybody can do this. And it just takes working together.
Yeah, the biggest challenge is, and I told this to the folks up in Connecticut, is learning to put your ego last. You really have to decide, I don't have an ego, because it's not about you. It's about getting the information, covering the story, and it's not about you.
Right. Yeah. This is the stories that we cover. It's not definitely my story. And that's what I love, collaborating with all the different groups that I do and that our group does, because it's not me. And it's I know that it's not just me doing this. And it's before the Occupy movement came around, it was just me, and I would put these photos up and maybe a dozen people would see it. And I go back to that, and I remember that without all these various groups, that's where I am. I'm just on social media popping up a few pictures that a few people say,
the key is getting the work, the groups to communicate and work together. And certainly we are providing the link to some of the nodes now. And at our first anniversary, if anything I've learned is communication is the beginning and the end. You've got to communicate first and foremost between each other. There have been many times when we were going to an action and we have a slip up or something wouldn't get passed. It's very important. We're starting to explore new uses of software like Pirate Pad. Twitter is also very helpful. Facebook. We're using whatever resources that we can use to communicate with each other. And we're inviting everybody out there to do this as well. If you're tired of what's happening in your community, if you're tired of things that you don't think you have control over, if you're sick and tired of those things happening, there is something you can do about it. And that's this. You can be your voice. Or you can join an organization like this. Like Robert was saying a few minutes ago, we're all volunteers. We don't get paid for this. We do this because it's a labor of love for us. And we believe that this is the way that we're going to get ourselves out of some of the problems that we're confronting.
One of the things that I wanted to bring up is, and it's not so much political, I guess it's in the spirit of, We Act Radio had an event called Push Obama, Busboys and Pubs. What I wanted to bring up was 2008, the slogans for the Obama campaign was hope and change, and yes we can. And by the time the second election came around, people questioned that hope and change and the yes we can, and they were pointing their finger at Obama. And the White House pointed out that Obama did not say, yes, I can. And it was up to us. It was up to us to step up and create that change. So that's what, I think that's what we hope to do, is, you know, working together to create change. And I think this past year has been a beautiful start.
It's been a beautiful start, and it's not over. We have a long way to go. There's a lot of work to do. We've just begun. It's just the beginning.
And this week, I think we'll be covering